Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Just give everyone a moment to come in. How you doing, Will?
Really well, and just realized that I need to turn off my phone. I just got a notification.
Oh, yes. Everyone turn off your phones. Absolutely. Okay, let's start. Welcome. I am Natasha Daniel and the Manager of Workforce Development at Efficiency Canada. Thank you so much for joining us for a special Discovery EE. Today, we are observing Mental Health Awareness Month, and I'm facilitating from Toronto. Toronto actually originates from the Mohawk word Toronto, meaning the place in the water where the trees are standing. This is said to refer to the wooden stakes that were used as fishing weirs in the narrows of local river systems by the Haudenosaunee and the Huron-Wendat peoples. So the prominent streets that we walk on today in Toronto, some of our most famous streets, they were actually built upon some of the original portage trails used by many Indigenous peoples for many thousands of years. And just like that, the work that we're doing in energy efficiency is built upon the knowledge and sustainable practices of Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island. For those of you joining us for the first time, Efficiency Canada hosts Discovery EE sessions every 2 weeks. The sessions are meant to bring the sector and people interested in energy efficiency together to learn. And we're trying to highlight new research, findings from pilots, relevant topics, and innovations. Today, we're launching Will Gonell's Day in the Life campaign. A Day in the Life features real people in real energy efficient work environments. It showcases a range of professionals from engineers to architects, retrofitters, tradespeople, building science, academics, and many more. We will be releasing Will's amazing video today. Sticking to our theme of Mental Health Awareness Month, it shows a personal yet professional side of the sector that we've never seen before. It's an exciting and a timely tool to attract new and mid-career professionals to energy efficiency. So stay tuned for that on our socials because we will literally be dropping that today in the afternoon. We'll open the floor to questions after our discussion with Will. So please use the question and answer box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. This way, other people can upvote what they really want to hear about, and we can sort of create a little bit of equity in our question and answer period. If there is a language you're most comfortable communicating in, you're actually able to turn on the closed captioning function in various languages as well. Okay, so now let's get to it. Let's get to what we've all been waiting for. Meet Will Gonell, a builder of homes, commercial sites, and most of all, community. His business has helped many families increase their well-being in high-performance homes across Canada and the United States. Will founded Gonell Homes, a Toronto-based company specializing in custom home building, energy-efficient solutions, and retrofits. With over a decade of experience operating an internationally award-winning building business, he coordinates several teams across multiple sites with the most glowing, positive client relationships. Gonell stays current on industry trends as an active advisor on the City of Toronto's Transform TO Net Zero strategy, as well as to the International Well Building Institute. He also sits on the Program Advisory Committee at George Brown College. So let us welcome Will Gonell.
Hello,
Yay,
everyone.
this is where the applause comes in that we can't hear.
Jazz hands.
Welcome, welcome everyone. Welcome, Will. So we have to start off with our question that has gone, it's become quite a popular question. So let's start it off. If someone gave you a magic green wand, of course it has to be green, what would you wish for when it comes to advancing climate sustainability as well as net zero in the built environment?
It's a very loaded question, and the best answer that I can give to that is let's not reinvent something. Let's look at the places that are already doing it. So my magic wand would be to get policy aligned in the things that need to be done. So, for example, if we look at European countries and nations throughout the world that actually have great sustainable standards, that is in part due to the fact that they have policy and laws and regulations on their side to be able to do that. And once you do that, similar to, for example, here in Toronto, as well as in the United States, they put the 4 bike lanes to kind of encourage / force people to get out there and exercise a little bit more. So I think that My magic wand would be to be used at a governmental level to get more governments in line with making sustainability.
Absolutely. I think when we talk about building sustainability in the built environment, there's many different players that make this happen. And oftentimes when we're looking at those codes and those standards and those tiers, we're looking at municipal governments that we want them to come in on this, right? And the more that they can legislate it, the more that builders were going to have to practice this. So it makes complete sense that you want to bring in policy for your magical green wand. Makes a lot of sense. And actually, Felipe, who's also part of our Energy Trailblazers program, very much started off with a similar answer, him being a retrofitter and working within the construction element through restoration. So going on, Will, I can't even try and articulate to say that, like, I can't even talk about what an insane mid-career transition that you have made into the built environment and into construction, how you've become a supporter of energy efficiency and better building standards and tiers. It's extremely motivational to know how you got into this and how you decided to be a part of even the Energy Trailblazer program. Your early career was rooted in public service as a United States Marine and a New York City Police Department officer. You pivoted into construction after mentoring at-risk youth. It literally sounds like a movie starring Michelle Pfeiffer. Can you tell us how did that time mentoring youth and, your life full of service, how did that bring you into construction and to the built environment?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'll start it off by I want to make sure that I try to encapsulate as many of our audience viewers or listeners as possible. And I like to say that you don't always need a plan. You don't always need to have it all figured out. A lot of times it's just doing the right things and in hopes that things would happen to you. So, for example, if I can digress here for 1 second, my journey into the military was completely circumstantial because growing up very poor, it was my escape out of my situation specifically. Then the transition into a police officer became a lot easier because I was now a U.S. veteran and it facilitated it that way. Now, when I started volunteering and mentoring young adults, I found it very fascinating because coming from the military, it's one of those organizations that is do as I do, not do as I said. And although I was brought in as this expert to guide these young adults into their career journeys, which is specifically in the trades, at that time, Toronto had a program to keep the kids off the streets that were prone to join gangs because of the circumstances. Because let's face it, what everyone looks for is security, shelter, love, acceptance, all those things, which in the wrong light, in the wrong opportunity, that presents itself as gangs, another thing. So how do we then guide them in the right direction? So let's say if you are struggling in school for whatever reason, maybe the trades is for you. Even if you're not struggling in school, trades is for you. So that's what we were doing. We were encouraging young adults to join a trade program, whether in conjunction with their regular schooling or as an alternative if they weren't going to school. But during that time, I kind of said to myself, I feel like a hypocrite because never in my life had I ever given advice that I didn't do myself. And I used to tell these young adults saying, go become a plumber, a carpenter, electrician, all these different things. And I said, but I actually don't do those myself. So I took it upon myself to actually get out there and look for some. I knew nothing about the construction industry. So I took it out there to see who wanted to teach me. And little did I know how, at least in my experience, how reluctant the construction industry was. I made it a point to get up very early. I was hitting the job sites as early as 6 a.m. just to make sure I hit the bosses. I didn't even know they were foremen or the right structure, but I wanted to make sure that I was able to meet with people of influence or people that had decision-making power. And it was met with a lot of no's and a lot of apprehensiveness for sure. But my perseverance paid off. And I think that a lot of times things will happen in the time that they're supposed to happen with the people and the companies and things that you're meant to work with, whether that is good or bad. You count it all joy because good or bad, you're still going to learn. So then I ended up working with this company that it actually cost me more money to work for them, because at the time, I think I was getting paid below minimum wage. And keep this in mind, I was already retired from the police force. So picture this, retired police officer, military war veteran, blah, blah, blah. But I went as far down as below minimum wage. Why? Because I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn. It was something new to me, and I didn't mind paying the price to do so. So it cost me every time because I needed to get all the gear and all these things and get to site on my own and pay for my own car. But I'm a firm believer that it's like, give me the opportunity and I will make it mine. And that is my advice to everyone. Doesn't matter where you start, doesn't matter where they put you, as long as you put forth the hard work, you will shine through. Your light will shine through. And that's exactly what I did. You know, for the first 2 months or so, they had me digging the whole time. And the guys around me that knew my background, they're like, "Well, why are you doing this? Like, you don't need to do this." I was like, "Not that I need to do this. I want to do this." And but what they failed to see is that while I was digging, I was listening, I was watching, I was reading in my lunch break, I was watching videos when I went home. So I was learning even as I was digging. And then slowly but surely, I then started approaching my boss and I said, "I can frame." And he says, "No, you can't. You haven't been here long enough." I said, "I can't. Give me a chance." And I fought for that opportunity. Eventually, I became a framer. Then I moved on to the next thing. Then I moved, and every time I was proving him wrong throughout the journey, because that's what it is about. When you really want something, your efforts will shine through, but be your own advocate. You know, because there's a lot of hardworking people out there, but they're not great at becoming their own advocate. So through this journey, I rose through the ranks and all of that. But then I became a big believer in that I believe in this industry wholeheartedly. But if you really want to make a change, I wanted to own my own company, which is what I did. But that wasn't enough because I said, I need to be able to have an impact. I need to be able to, if I'm not going to sit here and just complain about things, I'm going to make a difference. So then that's how that journey into George Brown with the program advisory in the city, working at a policy level, and the rest kind of writes itself from there.
Absolutely. And we'll get into all of that, into everything that you do later on. But I think what's amazing is that you were inspired. You know, so much of our construction industry is saying that we need more people. We need more people. We don't have enough. And here you were getting inspired by the young people, and you were saying, hey, there's an alternative to perhaps doing something that's more risky in your neighborhood, or doing something that is illegal, or joining a gang, right? That there are different options for you by joining a trade. And then that inspired you to literally start this award-winning business that you didn't know at the time would become an award-winning business. One of the things that you said in your day in the life video is that, and I think it relates to mental health as well, there's something so special about being in the built environment that you don't get from being behind a computer. And it's a little bit of a different feeling because you are actually able to see from the start to the finish a product. And you are a part of building that from the early stage to its completion, right? And you said that's something that just got to you, that and when we think about in Mental Health Awareness Month, right now in May, and we think about some of the things that we can't control. And then we think about the physical environment that we sometimes can control, or depending on our vulnerability, we have no control over our built environment. So we're exploring this month how our homes, our schools, our places of work and play, directly impact our mental well-being. You being the high performance buildings consultant that you are, many people don't know, you're also a mental health advocate. So how do our homes affect our mental health? Break it down for us.
Yeah. So I just want to make it very clear. This is not just something that I've studied. Yes, I do have a lot of studies in psychology from my undergrad program, but it is something that very personal to me because I grew up in a family with a lot of mental health, from my mother to my sister, my extended family, you name it. And I myself, I struggle with post-traumatic stress disorder along with traumatic brain injury. So this is not just something that's theoretical to me. It's something that's very practical and very personal. I'd like to start there because it's very important that for people to know that if you really want to make a change in a big way, it helps a lot of times when you can relate to that individual. And having been affected in one way or another definitely gives me what I would like to say, that foresight and or the empathy to know and understand those circumstances. And I just want to make it very, very clear, because if you look at me, I am the antithesis to what mental health should be. What does mental health look like? And that's why I make it very clear to identify my conditions so that people can see, even though I'm smiling and everything, I am still dealing with my own circumstances. So it's very important. You can still be a functioning individual while struggling with some of these things. And I just want to make it very clear that you're okay. You're in a safe place. It is okay to be vocal, because I'm a male, military, police, all these things. My background, everything is taboo when it comes to mental health awareness. So I just want to make it very clear before I answer your question, Natasha, that speak up, get help. If you're struggling right now, reach out to someone. I will make myself available for that if need be, but I just want to be very clear about that. So because it's something very personal to me, the way that I approach construction is with all these things in mind. Growing up, not having a home, I understand and know the struggles of that insecurity. And the reality is, we talk about all these things, we talk about sustainability, we talk about energy poverty, but within that, there's poverty. And there's a large sector of people that don't have the security of a home. So, and I just want to make that very clear. Like, I am empathetic and I am aware of our bigger situation. There is a housing crisis, sure. But then when we look at our existing homes and our existing dwellings, and we think about what does it do for our mental health? Well, from a very rudimentary way to look at it, we got to look about it as shelter. We started, we look at civilization, we started very nomadic, then we moved into the architectural era, the agricultural era, and so on and so forth, until we finally started settling in homes to what they are today. And we use that as a way of obviously shelter from the elements, as a way of security, to bring family together and all these things. So when we look at what are some of the things that can be done to make those spaces better, you got to look at the family unit. What is it that you want? You want a space where you can congregate together, because that human connection is very important. So when I look at places, when I look at the dwelling, I look at who is my client and who is their family. What can I see their family doing? And then I would suggest a design element, for example. It starts even at the design element that says, okay, your family is going to get together here. Here's a quiet space if that's available, so you can have that too. But this is the gathering place. Then we look at things like natural light. Natural light is so important, especially in North American climates where, seasonal depression is a real thing. So we have to look at natural lighting. Natural lighting failing, assuming that you don't have that option, there is great leadway when it comes to our lighting and the effects that it actually has on us, like better lighting that's actually healthy for us. So, and then we also think about, there's so many things. We think about color. If we think about fast food restaurants, they are those colors for a very specific reason, because those colors make you hungry. So now, if you are in your home, and it is proven, we spend about 90% of our time indoors, whether that is in work, our homes, or a combination thereof. There's a lot of time being spent indoors. So how do we then use something as simple as colors to elevate our moods? There are certain colors that will make us happier, certain colors that will make us a little bit more dull. And you may need a combination of those depending on what your job is, how you're feeling emotionally, or some of those things. So you may want to play around with some of those things. And from if we want to take it even further, you've got color. You can also incorporate a little bit of biophilia. Biophilia is incorporating a little bit of greenery, whether that's as simple as a green wall, as simple as a plant. Not only are you cleaning the air in your own home, but you're also getting that green element, which is going to make you feel better. And we can go on and on about air and water. When we think about air, you're also eliminating a lot of the pollutants and allergies and things that are actually in the air outside. So our homes nowadays, and a lot of times, if you put the right systems in place, are actually better than the air outside. Because if your home is next to a busy highway or a busy street, you don't want those fumes coming into the house. You don't want to stand outside on the yard or the porch, because you're breathing those. If your kid or your person or yourself, you have an allergy, you may not want to be outside during certain times of the year, because you'll have to rely on medication. So our homes are now more than ever working for us and helping us at every stage of the way, especially when it comes to mental health.
Absolutely. And I think you said it before, making a home high performance. When we just look at, so if we look at, homelessness or energy poverty or the housing crisis, we're literally talking about instability of actually having a home. But then for so many of us who are living in energy poverty and, living in a stable structure of sorts, the health that we're receiving from those structures, whether light, whether air, whether it's the water quality that we're getting, all of those things are affecting not just our physical health, but also affecting our mental health. And so the more vulnerable you are in our society as a Canadian, the less efficient of a space that you are living in when we talk about it in the overall spectrum of health, right?
I'll give you an example.
Yeah,
This is the most vivid example I can give you, and
yeah,
it's one that is often overlooked. So I grew up pretty much in the ghettos of New York City, and the intercoms never worked in the building. So all you would hear all day, all hours of the night, open the door. That's all you would hear. And someone will either have to come down or throw down a key so they can get in. And between that and the ambulance and police cars, it became my white noise essentially. But that's the point that I want to make. The point that I want to make is something as simple as sound. Something as simple as sound. If you live next to a busy highway, if you live in a, let's just say, a busier neighborhood, or a neighborhood that is a little bit on the lower income, that there's a lot more noise, that you've got the cars playing a lot of music, you've got police activity, you may have all these things. All that noise comes into our home, and what that does, it creates a lot of anxiety. And one of the things that I want to mention is, if we look at depression and anxiety, the amount of lost time from work is $1 trillion with a T, trillion, because that's how much we are being affected, whether it be a version of depression or a version of anxiety or a combination thereof. And some of the, that's not even looking at the other things that are out there. So something as simple as, when we talk about high performance, everyone knows what a tri-pane window can do. And we're like, yeah, I want a triple glazed window. It's amazing. And it is. It's amazing from a thermal breakpoint. It's amazing from a comfort level. But one of the things that's not often spoken about is the sound transmission level. It eliminates sound tremendously, which in turn helps us with our anxiety, keeps the street on the streets, keeps the comfort and the noise level pretty low, because society nowadays is just getting louder and louder. So doing those simple things, which is something very standard in a high performance home, is something that we need to speak more on.
absolutely. And let's talk about, the obvious part too, is that in high performance homes, you're saving energy and you're saving money, which helps with everyone's mental health, right? And it helps, especially living in this economy right now. It's something that we want to think about more, particularly for low income communities and families and those struggling right now. So tell us about your start. You told us a little bit about how you started in construction, but how did you come across energy efficient solutions or a better way to build?
I was fortunate enough, and this is what I mean, when things are meant for you, they happen. And that's not to say that the road is going to be peachy, because it certainly wasn't for me. But the company that I ended up working for was actually, the owner of the company was actually one of the leading people in Canada. I didn't know this at the time, that was leading the way when it came to ICFs. ICF stands for insulated concrete forms, and is a way of building where you have 2.5 inches on average on the outside of foam, concrete in the center, and then 2.5 inches of foam on the other side. So when the structure is put together, similar to Legos, essentially what you get is very minimal to no thermal break, very little to no thermal break. And we were doing this a very long time. Now more people know about ICFs, but we were doing it before it was cool. And we started building in this manner. And the reason why it's also very important, because the noise level that ICFs is able to absorb is tremendous. So there's a whole bunch of benefits, which I won't really go into, but we started building this, and at the time I didn't know better. It's just the way that we were building. And over time, I will go to other job sites, or I would walk by certain job sites and learn I actually learned how to build ICS before I learned how to stick frame. In other words, wood construction. And once I went back to doing wood construction, I said, wait a minute, like, this doesn't make sense to me. Like, why are we building this way? And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with wood construction, but the way it was being built, the way it is still being built, was just wrong to me. It felt very archaic and very old. So then I said, this has got to be wrong. This has got to be wrong. And I kept going down the journey of the ICF route. And I said, okay, I have to learn more. So I started attending trade shows here in Canada. And I said, okay, this is good, but I got to learn more. Then I started going down stateside. And I said, okay, this is good. And I'm not saying that what I knew was better than what was out there, but for context, Canada today is 157 years old. The US today is 246 years old. I was more interested in the homes that were built 1,000 years ago that are still standing. So that was my journey into Europe. And once I started learning some of these things, I then came back and I said, okay, there's a better way to do this. Okay, these standards may not be here in Canada as of yet, but I am going to do my darnest so that as a value add, if I know these things, I can at least plan, present, or build to accommodate for a lot of these things when it comes to the physical construction world. Because, and I think that I'm going to digress to the original question, Tasha, because you said, what would I do? And I don't want to put the onus specifically on politicians. I think that a portion of my magic wand would be education to the public sector, to be aware, because knowledge is power. And the reality is, if our society as a whole, if our country as a whole is educated when it comes to a lot of these things, then they will push the politicians to make this possible, or they would try to do it themselves. So education would be a big component of that. And I think along with that, we have to change our language. For a long time when we built our stick frame homes or wood construction homes, we put the insulation on the inside. Guess what? Change our language. Outsolation. Forget the insulation. Outsolation, because the insulation should really be on the exterior. Like it's been done for hundreds of years over in Europe, which we're just becoming at ease with the idea of doing that here in Canada or the US or North America as it is.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about your journey in Europe. And I mean, I think you made it very clear that you wanted to learn from, you could say, some of the innovators, or, some of the innovators, you could say, of energy efficient building. What are some other practices that you see from Europe that are coming now into North America? And what are some things that we have to be excited about in the energy efficiency built environment?
So much, but I just want to add one more thing.
Yeah.
Just because my journey took me overseas, I do not want to take for granted the things that have happened at home. There is great innovation and there is great construction happening both in the US and in Canada. And as a matter of fact, the ICF block as we know it today was actually invented here in Canada, in Algonquin Park. And then if we look at things like the blower door test, the original founder, again, a Canadian in Saskatchewan. So there's great Canadian innovation as well as great Canadian US innovation. So I don't want to take that away. Some of the things that are exciting and are happening and that are finally coming over from, I don't want to say Europe, all over the world, except for North America, are heat pumps. Heat pumps have been now a very common thing in our vocabulary because it's a very efficient way to heat and cool our home. And over the years, they've gotten incredibly reliant and efficient with temperatures. We're operating temperatures as low as -25 Celsius. For my American friends, that's -13. So they've become very, very efficient. So, and I don't want to bore people to death with those common things that are out there, but when we think about some of the other things that are kind of coming over, we look at things like robotics. There's a lot of push going now into robotics. There's a lot of software. There's a lot of software that's coming out there where it is for data management or project management. There's also a lot of IoT. I actually went to a really cool place in Switzerland, which is called the iLab. No, it's not sponsored by Apple. and it's all about the IoT, the Internet of Things. In other words, how things are connected. Like how is the data received, let's say from your smartwatch, can it activate your home to then cool the house to your liking? So we see a lot of developments coming over when it comes to that, but not to get too techy, but that's one of the things that are coming out when it comes to wearables. There's a lot of wearable technology. AI is taking a huge important role. And then we're also looking at things as modular and pre-construction and prefabrication. Because when we look at even something as simple as lumber, lumber is getting, trees nowadays, they're being cut pretty much as adolescents. Trees aren't really growing to their full potential. So the strength, a lot of times in our lumber, and even the conditions in which we build are not optimal. They're prone to, there's a lot of moisture content in our wood. So doing a lot of modular and pre-construction has eliminated a lot of that, especially for North American climate where we're dealing with weather limitations and such. That has come a long way. So those, I think, would be the biggest things that are finally coming over in a big way.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for painting that picture for us of what to look forward to. Taking your journey from New York to Toronto to Europe and learning from all these different built environments, you also spent a lot of time within Dominican Republic and learning about construction as well in a Caribbean environment. How have all of these things, I mean, all of your experience have shaped your business, Gonell Homes, and you very authentically have built ESG strategy into your construction work. You spoke about, Gonell Homes is known for special custom builds in the city like no one else has done. You're known also for your ESG strategy, working with accessibility within your homes when it comes to seniors or when it comes for people who are differently abled. Oftentimes, when we talk about energy efficiency, we kind of silo it. And sustainability becomes about the environment or the physical environment. But it seems like, Will, you tackle sustainability from a holistic point of view, that it's a mind, body, soul experience when you enter one of your homes. Can you tell us about how Gonell Homes has sort of garnered this reputation, this very unique reputation within the city and outside of the city?
It comes, and again, nothing speaks like experience. And I don't mean just in the practical sense, but in the things lived in the past, in my personal life, where there was no thermal comfort. And I can speak to, growing up in an apartment building in New York City, as for those of you that don't know, in the summertime is very humid and very warm, and we couldn't afford electricity to put on a fan. That was a luxury. A fan was a luxury. So on the very warm days, uh, my mom and my sister, we would sleep in the bathroom floor because it was the only tile floor in the place, and it was cooler. And then throughout the night, we would take cold showers, just kind of be cool. So a lot of it comes from experience, my experiences, and then because of my experiences, and this may not be everyone's story, but my experiences were so harsh and drastic that I made it a point to, when it came time to people entrusting me with their dream to build their home, I made sure to listen. I made sure to listen to what their needs are. But based on my experiences, I also made it a point to incorporate my lessons learned along with everything else I learned from the industry to give them the best possible product, to give them something that was multi-generational, to do something where I accounted for those things that they couldn't even think about. And it's one thing to be knowledgeable just on the building science of things, which is supremely important. But you also got to think about, how is this house going to age? How is this family going to age? What kind of adaptability should we account for when we build these structures? What kind of usage is this house going to have? And how can we offset that one way or another? And once you start looking at it from a very holistic way in that manner, then you start making different decisions. And I have a very interesting case study in which we renovated a penthouse to make it very accessible. The gentleman, it was a couple with their kids, and the gentleman was a paraplegic. And this place was pretty much a hospital, but in a very classy way. Like if you saw photos of it, you wouldn't even think that it had all the accessibility things that it had on top of the efficiency. You know, the biggest thing when someone has impairment of any kind is you want to give them power. You want to give them dignity. And you give them dignity and power by them having a little bit of control. So something as simple as putting a voice activated something if they can speak, or putting a motion sense something if they can't. You got to account for those things. That's something that we took to heart, and that's something that we poured into every project, is being able to adapt it that way. And what I've learned from that particular project is, sadly, the gentleman died due to complications with COVID, and we then had to go in and change everything because there were lifts in the bedrooms. It was like pretty much like a hospital, and we had to go in and renovate the space to alleviate the family from having to live still in this, as they were still mourning for their loved one. And what I learned was the adaptability of a home. I learned how easy it was to adapt things forward and redact them back. In other words, that this house had everything it needed to adjust and account for the needs that this gentleman had, but then we were very easily able to turn it back into just a regular condominium where they can live out their lives. And if they needed to, as they got older, we were able to switch it back again because everything was there. So everything that we approach it from that point of view. How can we save you money? And for the record, true sustainability is about keeping what's existing. It's not about building new, because the common misconception is like, let's tear this down and build it more efficiently. No, you're adding landfill, you're adding all these things, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but it's about keeping the things that we have. So when you look at it from how can we save them money, outsolation, energy efficient windows and things like that, which is going to save them a lot of money in the long run. And then you got to look at it from a very practical point of view. I have knee problems. I have all kinds of problems. I'm young, but I'm old, is what I say. And I look at it and I say to the people, I said, hey, have you ever thought about an elevator? Oh, no, that's not in the budget. We don't need that. We're young. I was like, but one day you're going to be old, or your parents are going to come over and they're not going to be able to get around. So can we put at least blocking in the walls to add a chairlift? Can we put a rough in one of the closets? So in the future, that can be an elevator shaft. So we look at everything from a holistic point of view, whether that is an accessible standard, a sustainability standard, and as well as a health standard, to see how this home, as efficient as it is now going to work for you, and not just in energy savings, but also from a mental health point of view.
Absolutely. Well, we could talk forever. There's so many questions. There's questions on top of questions that I have for you. But if you can answer this question as succinctly as possible, and then we can move on to the question and answers. But I think this is an important question because you take up a very unique space. You sit on boards and you also advocate policy-wise for better building standards with the City of Toronto, and you're also part of the Well Building Institute. You also, literally build the physical environment. So you understand the practicality of what it's like to be a builder and be in construction and do high performance. Oftentimes, these two bodies are not talking to one another nearly enough. There's a stigma about those who are builders, and there's a stigma about those who are in policy. There's this idea that, cutting costs in today's economy cannot coincide with reducing carbon emissions in the environment. And you are a living example of how they both coincide. Can you speak to that very shortly before we go into the question and answer?
Okay, real quick. The best way that I can answer that is by being in the room. So, like I said, it's not enough to wish for something to change. Sometimes you have to be the change that you want to see. As cliche as that sounds, it is very important for you or anybody to be in those rooms where these decisions are made. Because, for example, for me as a builder, when I've gone into some of these rooms where the policies are being done, the left hand doesn't talk to the right, and none in between each other to meet. So it's very important to look at it from a very practical view, and also look at the futuristic view to see where that middle ground is to make change effective. So, for example, and a lot of times what I suggest, and if I were to look at a very holistic way, and what's the tech that I'm the most excited about as an example, I would say is just looking at our current construction methods and redefining that. So, for example, years and years ago, like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, open web joists were very expensive. Now we know that there's a better way to build, the prices have gone down, and we're able to do those things so that we're not penetrating through the building envelope. So if I were to really say that, it's just be in the room and be the change that you want to see for sure.
Amazing. Very inspiring for both sides. We have a question from Nick. Having lived and worked in both US and Canada, what do you believe Canada is doing well versus what you think Canada may be lagging in high performance new construction?
I've had the benefit of being a consultant in many states, and I got to see some great construction and such not great construction. One of the things that I really love, and Canada is a big differentiator here. The way that it works stateside is that every state has their own different bylaws, and they're very drastic and very different. Where I find that the overall, and keep this in mind, the building code is the bare minimum that people can do legally. It might as well be a get out of jail card that they can do just to, get through, make a quick buck, and kind of go about it. So overall, the Canadian building code, if we look at places like Ontario, BC, etc., tends to be a lot better, is what I've noticed, than a lot of states. That being said, there is some great construction. So on the flip side of that, what the state has, you got to remember the state is a very liability focused place where if you do something wrong, I'm going to sue your pants. So in the States, everything is about protecting your back. So what I was doing, for example, is I was a consultant in which I will verify work. So the type of work that we were doing that I was testing for, I was testing windows with water and things, which is not very common here in Canada. So we take a lot of the sites that I visited and I consulted on take those things very, very serious because they know that the code lacks. So therefore, they're bringing consultants to bring it up to the higher standard. And I saw things down there that I've yet to see here in Canada.
Amazing. Thank you for answering that. If anybody else has any last minute questions, put it in the chat now, or you can potentially get in contact with Will later and connect with him. Will, you have inspired so many people in the built environment. Going to George Brown College with you, which you're also a professor at, I've been able to speak to some of the people that you've mentored and some of the students. And one important thing that they mentioned, Will, we have 5 minutes left. Something that really inspired me was that they told me that while their whole college career happened, if they didn't meet you, or if some of the colleagues that you worked with didn't know you and didn't learn to build better because of the things that you had learned about energy efficiency and high performance building, they would have never known about this whole new world. Now we're approaching Canada's SDG goals, particularly within the built environment, and we're trying to lower our carbon emissions. And this is the way many countries are going. Yet so many students, we need so many people in construction, and then those in construction who are maybe studying it right now, or maybe even experts in it, are not fully aware. They haven't been introduced to high performance construction. What are some, closing remarks that you can leave us with, knowing that we're going to need a huge workforce by 2030, by 2040, in order to get, just Toronto's net zero strategy off the ground, let alone the whole country? What message do you have? What can we do? What should we be doing to sort of change a little bit and shake up the construction industry when it comes to high performance construction?
Well, I got to give it up to organizations like obviously Efficiency Canada and so many others, which they're really becoming the soapbox or the pedestal for that voice and that message. And because again, going back to my original comment, part of the biggest change really comes from education. And yes, there is a big gap and a large need for labor and especially for sustainability. So I think that those that are doing it, those that know, I think it is our responsibility to scream it off the rooftops and everywhere that we can, just to be able to spread that message. Because the reality is, I got lucky in the sense that I ended up when I first started with this company that was building or constructing in a very efficient manner. But not everyone has that experience. So a lot of times you don't know what you don't know. If you're stuck in a traditional housing development or something of that sort, or a smaller company that doesn't have the budget or the knowledge to build better, I think that the onus becomes on us, the ones that are doing it, to find ways to give back and to be the voice to just kind of continuously be spreading that message.
Thank you so much, Will, for spreading that message and for saying it so loudly and so proudly that we can build better. And, Will Gonell Developments is building better and setting such an amazing example. And with that said, Will is a part of our Energy Trailblazers program, which is just that, spreading the message about amazing trailblazers from across Canada that are literally changing the built environment through their work within energy efficiency. And so Will's campaign today is just that. We're trying to show folks mid-career switches, whether you're young and in construction, whether you're just starting your career, that energy efficiency is something that's viable, that not only can you make money, but you can make change in this world, right? And that you can build a meaningful career. So that will be releasing later this afternoon. Stay tuned. Thank you so, so much for this very heartful conversation during Mental Health Awareness Month, Will. It was a great discussion. This session was recorded and it should be posted on our website by midweek or next week. You can find a selection of our past sessions on the event page, and all past sessions are on the Efficiency Canada YouTube
This is how
channel.
AI optimizes my schedule.
Oh.
This meeting got canceled.
There you go.
The wonders of technology.
Last minute wonders of technology. Don't you just love that?
I just want to thank everyone for attending, and a quick shout out to Natasha and the staff for making this possible, because there's a lot of work that happens in the background, and I just want to, give honor where honor.
Absolutely. Thank you, Will. Thank you so much to our audience. Be aware, we have a bunch of mental health awareness links that we also have within all of our social media platforms. Enjoy, learn more, and some beautiful weather outside, at least in Toronto. Take care, everyone.